Alright, this video is going to be in keeping with my kind of policy of making videos if I ever find myself engaged in lengthy comment diatribes. The topic I want to discuss, I'm worried that it's going to be beating a dead horse to a point, but I'll try and bring in some other kind of perspectives on this. But in my video, A Liberal Hypocrite, I Rebuke Thee, a person came on there who apparently, I don't know if they're a subscriber, but someone who's watched my videos a certain degree and actually agreed with them. He said that he really enjoyed or he really appreciated my World War II revisionist videos, which in terms of mainstream acceptability are going to be actually pretty far out there. But he just started off by saying, you have completely discredited yourself, that you've just shown yourself to be a complete moron, and that everything you say is wrong, and that you pretend like you know all these things and you don't. You clearly have no idea what you're talking about. Now, that video was about critiques of liberals and their hypocrisy, how they are hypocrites when it comes to war and civil liberties, at least by and large, most of them, most of the time. He didn't offer any kinds of refutation of any of those points or anything that I claimed in that regard. What he had took issue with was what I was wearing, which was this shirt, which you may order yourself if you go to the website of the Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership, JPFO. And you look this up, you should be able to find this. You can also find targets and posters like this. And I love this shirt. It's a great shirt. I've had this shirt for going on 10 years now. I've been offered to sell this shirt. People have offered to buy it from me, and I will say no, even at high prices. And his problem with this shirt was that it says, all in favor of gun control, raise your right hand. And what was he upset about is he said that Hitler did not favor gun control. That Hitler certainly did not favor gun control, and that this was just an NRA lie. It was stupid. There is no historical basis for it whatsoever. And that for me to mouth this, I was just mouthing the propaganda of partisan talking heads, and that I couldn't take myself seriously if I was to believe that Hitler was for gun control when he clearly wasn't. And he posted a link to an article about how there are many gun control measures instituted during the Weimar Republic, especially early in the Weimar Republic in 1919, and then slightly less draconian measures issued in 1928. And that the Nazis, that's when registration was established, and that the Nazis pretty much just picked that up. And then they just added confiscation from the Jews and the communists and the Social Democrats and whoever else they deemed enemies of the state. And he said Hitler certainly did not advocate a 100% ban. And since he didn't advocate a 100% ban, that means that he wasn't for gun control. Now, this shirt does not say all in favor of a 100% ban, raise your right hand. It says all in favor of gun control. If you listen to Helmke, he's retired now, but Sarah Brady or Carolyn McCarthy or Colin Goddard, the professional victim of the Virginia Tech shootings, if you listen to these people and they say, we favor gun control, they don't mean, at least by their admission, they don't mean a 100% ban. Now, some people speculate that deep down some of them actually want that, but they explicitly say no, they don't want that. When they say they want common sense gun control, they don't mean we want common sense 100% bans. You know, when someone like Bill O'Reilly says, I'm for a little bit of gun control, it doesn't fit to then say he's for a little bit of a total gun ban, or a 100% gun ban, or a complete ban on firearms. Yes, a total gun ban is a type of gun control, but the term gun control is much broader than a 100% ban. In fact, in the political discussion of the United States, and actually of other countries as well, with one or two minor exceptions, the use of the term gun control almost never means a 100% ban. Almost never. When Chuck Schumer says he wants common sense gun control, he does not mean, or at least this is his expressed position, maybe deep down he does mean it, but we don't know. He does not mean 100% ban. He means like background checks or something along those lines. So it is a complete straw man and then he goes, it's implied. No, people use the term gun control to describe all sorts of measures, magazine ceilings on magazine, or restrictions on magazines, restrictions on type, restrictions on the number of sales, waiting periods, background checks, taxes, permits, all these things. None of these things are 100% bans, and all of these things are considered gun control. So how is it implied? It's really very unlikely that it would be implied, because it's almost never the point. Even in the UK, they don't have a 100% ban. And it's just an extremely invalid leap to say, well, if I say a gun control, then that means 100% ban. That's also kind of a leap to say I'm an idiot because I wore a shirt that had something on it, even if what my shirt said was incorrect, and it's not. That doesn't necessarily make me a moron. It maybe just means I have bad taste in the t-shirts I randomly throw on. Well, not randomly, but throw on before a video. But there's more to it than that. If you look at me, there's actually a history of my use of the term gun control. If you go on my channel, I have an entire video series on gun control, and that series is not one video that says why a total ban is wrong or analyzing a total ban. In fact, of the many videos that I have, and I think it's over 30 at this point, about gun control, none of them are about a total ban. They're about things like various studies. They're about background checks. They're about waiting periods. They're about various crime statistics and comparing between countries. None of them are analyses of 100% bans, because that is not something that is on the table. That is not something that's hardly ever discussed. There are a few people, I can't say it's never, it does fall within the rubric of gun control, but it's a tiny sliver of what that term means and is used for. Now, as it so happens, I don't remember ever thinking that Adolf Hitler was for 100% ban on guns. I don't remember ever thinking that. I also don't remember ever hearing a gun rights advocate say that. However, there are a lot of gun rights advocates out there, and there is a lot of rhetoric, much of it which is stupid, that comes from them, and it would not surprise me if sometime, at some point, some gun rights advocate has said that. Alex Jones, I've only ever heard him say Hitler was for gun control. I've never heard him say Hitler was for 100% ban, unless we're going to go for the equivocation of the two terms, which I think is unjustified, or the implication of one from the other, which again is unjustified. I don't see it coming from him. I've never heard it from any of the big names like Larry Pratt or any of the NRA people. But I certainly have never used it in that way. Now, as it happens, about 4 or 5 days before I received these comments, I just happened to crack open a book that I had bought, that I mentioned in my video, Gold, Guns, and Books. And that book is Gun Control in the Third Reich. This book right here by Stephen P. Holbrook. And the first chapter of this book, well, let's see, second chapter, the 1928 Law on Firearms. That's Weimar Republic's weapons laws. All right, which I've read this far already. First chapter, Insurrection and Repression. This is about the 1919 law in Weimar Republic. And then Keeping Firearm Registration Out of the Wrong Hands. That's chapter 3. This is about some developments that happened at the end of 1931, which is again before the Nazis came to power, at the late Weimar Republic. I haven't actually gotten to the Third Reich part of the book yet. So, absolutely, when he thought, and I've said this before, it's kind of funny. I don't know if this guy could actually be called a liberal or not, but when a lot of times they think when they're being the most clever is often when they're being the most ridiculously and retarded. Um, yes, I'm aware that there was gun control in Weimar Germany, and I'm aware that Hitler uh, built on this, that he used this. And the argument then kind of devolved that, like, you can't say Hitler's for gun control because, uh, there already was gun control, and maybe what Hitler favored was gun control by American standards, but it wasn't gun control by German standards. Okay, the problem with that is then gun control or gun rights become completely relative terms, and so we could say, uh, you could say there's no gun control in the UK because the UK is accustomed to having a near ban. They don't have a total ban, but a near ban. And so it's not gun control that they have a near ban because that's what they have in the UK. All right, or Japan. You could say Japan doesn't have gun control because they've always had almost a complete ban for civilians. So it's not for it to be gun control. It has to be an increase, a relative increase in regulations. And if there's already regulations, then that's not an increase, and then that's not gun control. Uh, if that's your definition of gun control or gun rights, for that matter, then neither of them are valid things. Neither of them ever happen. They're always something that was inherited. And I don't think you would agree with this. This would be akin to saying Thomas Jefferson was not racist because racism was accepted in that context, and racism was inherited by previous systems in the United States. And so uh, uh, Thomas Jefferson was not racist because racism existed before. He didn't make things more racist, so he's not racist. And you could look at Hitler and say, oh, he didn't make more gun control laws. He just inherited the ones he had. Now, that's false, by the way. The Weimar Republic had registration, but they didn't confiscate guns uh, from Jews prior to exterminating them. They didn't exterminate them at all, and they didn't confiscate their guns. Okay, the Nazis did do this. And what's so interesting is this guy was admitting, yes, the Nazis did confiscate guns from Jews and communists and some others, although he wanted to debate some of that. He goes, but that's not really gun control. They're just confiscating guns for political oppression. Well, that's the whole point. Like, that's the entire argument. That's what the Jews for the preservation of firearms ownership are not worried that gun laws are going to be inegalitarian. They're not worried that, well, their idea, they're not going to be satisfied, just because gun laws are uniformly applied. They wouldn't say, well, as long as they oppress everyone equally, it's not really gun control. Uh, any measure whatsoever is going to be considered gun control. And targeting a particular group doesn't make it better. It doesn't make it less gun control. In fact, that's exactly what the Jews for preservation for firearm ownership are afraid of. The NRA would say, look, the idea that you need gun rights to defend against tyranny, it's not there for people who have nothing to worry about, right? It's not there for people who, for whatever reason, are not going to be the targets of some kind of democidal tyranny. It's for the people who are going to be the targets of that. That's what it's necessary for. So, this idea that, they were only they're the only reason they were confiscating them, which he totally admitted, was in the context of their anti-Semitism. Or again, this is another thing. You could say Hitler's not anti-Semitic because anti-Semitism was quite common, and that was just part of the thing back then. And so, you can't say he's anti-Semitic. You can't say he's for gun control because he simply favored all the laws that Weimar Republic had put into place, plus the confiscation of firearms from the Jews and the communists and a whole host of others. Less celebrated, but still pertinent. Right, so then he went into this whole thing, like, I shouldn't be talking about Hitler. This is kind of an interesting side point. I shouldn't be referencing Hitler. It's inappropriate to reference Hitler because it's cliche. And I've heard this, there's even supposedly a fallacy that says, and it's not really a fallacy, but any use of the Third Reich or Hitler automatically invalidates you. That's just, that is a fallacious reasoning, though. I totally agree that references to the Third Reich are overblown. and that they're used to very poor effect, especially when it comes to foreign policy, where every person the United States wants to invade is the next Hitler, and every attempt to not go to war is the next Munich, and everybody who's against the United States is a Nazi or a fascist, even though these terms now essentially mean nothing. Um, and I agree with that. However, comparison is comparison. You know, if someone's anti-Semitic and they want all the Jews to go to concentration camps, I'm sorry, but that's similar to what the Nazis, wanted to do. And if someone favors National Socialism, then that's a similarity with the Nazis. And if somebody wants to be a vegetarian, then that's something that's similar to Hitler, because Hitler was a vegetarian. And it's not wrong to say that, to point that out. Now, it's useful rhetorically because even though there are regimes that are as bad or worse than the Nazis, especially the communists in the USSR and China, and to a lesser degree just because of scale in places like Cambodia and Vietnam, and Cuba and Laos. In the political understanding of the proletariat of the United States, and most of the world for that matter, people aren't familiar with that, but they are familiar with Hitler. They are familiar that Hitler existed. They know some of the details, depending on how ignorant or not ignorant they are, and they know that Hitler's bad. And so it is useful to point out that there are some parallels here between this and that, if the parallels are valid. Now, I would agree with this argument if he was correct and I was off base and Hitler actually wasn't for gun control. But Hitler was. The idea that the state would simply allow people access to firearms, the idea of a Second Amendment, or of the populace keeping arms for the prevention of a tyrannical government, completely rejected by the Nazis. Now, that idea didn't really exist in Germany by the time Hitler had come around, if it ever had. Halbrecht does talk about that. There is no tradition of a Second Amendment or a Bill of Rights in Germany as there is in the UK and the US, and few places other than that. But that doesn't mean then that Hitler supported those ideas. Just because he didn't have the option of repealing them doesn't mean that he supported them. The Nazi ideology is a totalitarian one, and one that's very much based on the absolute sovereignty and hegemony of the state within society, and the idea that individual people or groups of people within the society could have any kind of recourse of action or power base outside the state apparatus is quite anathema to that. And really, as with so much in the history of Prussian-dominated Germany, the purpose of the individual is to provide obligatory service to the state. The purpose of life is to serve the state. Not everybody in Germany and every part of Germany has that tradition as strongly, but the nation state that was unified or conquered, if you would be a better term, I think, by the Prussian state, that's their philosophy, and that's a gun control philosophy. Now, again, I think it's totally invalid to say relativistically, well, it's not more pro-gun control than the immediate predecessors. Well, the Weimar laws were actually a big imposition relative to the imperial German laws. And you could even say that, the 1919 law in Weimar was much more draconian. It was basically a decree, and it was pretty broad-stroked and basically kind of outlawed guns for everybody. The 1928 law just made it more enforceable and said it was going to be registration. It wasn't quite as tyrannical, though. And so you could say on this argument that, well, the Weimar Republic was actually pro-gun rights because they kind of toned down their draconian anti-gun measures slightly, 9 years after they were founded. No, that logic doesn't work. You have to have some kind of objective measure of what gun control and gun rights are. And you can't say, well, relativistically, because then relativistically, every state, every society is the way that it is, and they don't have gun rights or gun control. They just have their normative, plateau of gun liberty or lack of liberty. And yeah, I thought that was completely asinine, and I thought it was hilarious. Then the links, he goes, well, it's implied. Your shirt implies 100% ban. Like, no, it explicitly says not 100% ban. It explicitly says gun control, and I know that the people who made this shirt know that too, because the guy who ran the Jews for Preservation of Firearms Ownership for many years was the guy. He's now deceased, but his name is Aaron Zellman. You can go and listen to an interview with him on Scott Horton's show. Type Scott Horton and Aaron Zellman, and Aaron Zellman was very, very well versed and aware of the anti-gun laws that preceded the Nazis, and he was aware of what changes they made and what changes they didn't need to make. And the interview actually starts that way because Scott Horton reads this quote about Hitler, saying, we're going to control the arms to control the people. And Zellman cuts right in. He goes, that quote is a lie. That's not true. I have searched for many years to find any verification of that, and I cannot. Somebody somewhere invented that quote or misattributed it to Hitler. It's not correct. And then he goes into this explain. It was the good. It was the democratic Weimar who was the one who developed the lists. Halbrecht points out that gun confiscation from Jews directly preceded pogroms. So Kristallnacht, a few weeks before Kristallnacht in 1937, I want to say, the Gestapo and the SS went and started confiscating the arms, and then the bureaucracy would send out letters. You have to turn your guns in. We know that you have 3 pistols, and you need to turn them in. They did this before. This is kind of he had a good line here. I should have looked it up before. Yeah, arms in the hands of Jews are a danger to public safety. That's Hermann Goering. Countless studies have documented how the Nazi dictatorship repressed its political opponents, Jews, and other enemies of the state. For whatever reason, historians have paid no attention to Nazi laws and policies restricting firearm ownership as essential elements in creating tyranny. A skeptic might surmise that a better armed populace might have made no difference, but the Nazi regime certainly did not act on that premise. That's the kind of the argument, like, it wouldn't have mattered if you had guns, the bad guys still would have taken over, and then it begs the question, then why are the bad guys so interested in confiscating them beforehand? As they are very often. I don't know if you could say all the time. It would be difficult because it's what counts as a tyranny and what counts as a genocide. In the worst examples that we know, it does happen every time. In the USSR and in Germany and in China, it did happen. I want to say the United States is tyranny and hasn't done it yet. Okay, we can debate that. But, why did the Nazis bother going and taking Jews? And this was, so how is taking guns from Jews not gun control? Like if Barack Obama came out today and he said, I hereby ban all guns ownership by Jews, and all Jews have to turn in their guns to the government in 3 days or else, could you possibly say that's not gun control? You could say it's anti-Semitic, and that would be correct. It is anti-Semitic, but it's gun control on top of that. And that's definitely what the Nazis were doing. And in addition to perpetuating and continuing the Weimar era restrictions. And again, that is gun control as well. This, again, I think the best corollary here would be the slavery corollary. You can't say someone's against slavery because they didn't rescind it after they inherited it. It's like saying John Calhoun wasn't pro-slavery. He just inherited it from previous generations, or Jefferson Davis. Jefferson Davis wasn't pro-slavery. That was just the system that he inherited. So, don't tell me that Jefferson Davis. I could just see this picture. Raise your hand if you're in favor of slavery and have a picture of Jefferson Davis, and you'd be like, Jefferson Davis was not for slavery. Jefferson Davis, slavery already existed when he was there. He just failed to abolish it. And be like, this is your clever point that you think will invalidate. Of course, the whole thing is a fallacy. Even if everything I said about or anything on my shirt was wrong, it wouldn't mean anything in my video about liberal hypocrisy would be incorrect necessarily. He actually said that too, because I quoted Schur's book, and he said, "Oh, Schur's book is totally ridiculous," which is funny because the New York Times book review report on the back of it does not say that. But um, yeah, so yes, using the Nazis as an example is overblown. It's sometimes necessary and it's sometimes valid. So you can't fault somebody as long as they stay within the correct bounds. This is completely correct. This does not say. This does not say 100% ban. It says gun control, and gun control is not synonymous with 100% ban. So, yes, it's accurate. The policies that Hitler both used against his political enemies and the policies that he perpetuated, even though they had been initiated before him, those are all gun control. He's for gun control. And, the fact that he's not for a total ban, that does not weaken the argument of the gun rights activists at all, actually. If anything, it shows a very selective use of gun control can be extremely effective and extremely destructive, and that it's something that should not be tampered with. Not tampered with at all. That's the way the JPFO looks at it. They look at it, any tampering, even if it's not directed at Jews, and it's never directed against Jews in the United States, as tinkering with an absolute, vital, essential interest in their lives. And I think that's correct. And that's certainly what the Nazis were doing. And that's certainly a pertinent illustration of the principle. So, yeah. Again, I don't know if this guy is liberal or not, but it's just so... They want to say... Oh, here's the other thing I was going to think. He posted these long arguments. He'd read an article. I'm assuming this was posted on some pro-gun control website. Some professor at the University of Chicago wrote a big thing about the gun laws of the Weimar Republic, which I didn't read it, but I'm going to assume everything in that is accurate. Everything in there about Weimar Republic having restrictive gun laws is correct, is true. Although by the logic of this person, you can say, no, they're not restrictive gun laws because there was no Second Amendment to begin with, and so there's no gun control in a society, unlike the United States. But it's interesting, that information does not make Adolf Hitler pro-gun rights or not anti-gun control. Saying that Weimar did this or that does not speak towards the gun control or lack thereof of the Third Reich necessarily. And it's interesting to me that you have a narrative in your head, gun control is good, and anything that talks about the Nazis being pro-gun control is a lie, that you just interpret all information as being supportive of that claim, when that information, and the information that he linked, I believe is valid information about Weimar Republic era, the 1919 decree and the 1928 registration law. That's probably all correct. And yet that does not say an implication, and certainly doesn't say explicitly, that the Nazis were against gun control. It doesn't. So why you would cite that information, kind of, like what's that doesn't support, it doesn't deny it either. Like pointing out that the gun, that there were restrictive laws in Weimar Republic doesn't counter your point either. It's just, it's not, like, you have to ask, did Hitler / the Nazis and the Nazi Party became de facto whatever Hitler was able to communicate about his will before he even came to power, really? Was he for gun control? And whether or not, I'd be like saying, well, Emperor Hirohito was definitely for gun control, so there's no way Hitler... I mean, no, okay. And I guess maybe it's not the perfect example because Weimar Republic, it's the immediate predecessor regime, but still, that's, no one's debating. It's funny, like, if people today were going around saying Weimar Republic was, for gun control, supposedly this poster and all the liberals would be like, yeah, we agree. We agree with the Weimar Republic, and all the information that he put forward would verify the Weimar Republic was for gun control. But then they say, well, but not that fact. The fact that the Weimar Republic was for gun control means that the Third Reich was not for gun control. Nope, there's no logical reason. That's one fact and another fact, and then you're just saying, boom, like, hence one, hence the other, and there's no connection. And it's just kind of a testament to, you have a narrative in your mind, and you're just gonna imagine that all information verifies and reinforces that conclusion when it clearly doesn't. And the somersaults this guy had to kind of go through. Eventually, he stopped. He gave up. Maybe he could have just had better things to do, because we're getting kind of long-winded. So I'm not necessarily implying that I think that he believes that I defeated him in the debate, but this just yes. So in honor of him, I think y'all should go. It's a great conversation starter, by the way, which is the point. Like, I could have a shirt that said, like, Weimar Republic supported gun control, in which case he would be totally in agreement, and people are like, what's the Weimar Republic? Like, never heard of that. Where's Weimar? Like, this, people understand. And not only do people understand this, it's factually correct. I love it. It's got the Star of David with the, it's got a AR-15 and then like a Kentucky long rifle. Beautiful. 1991, JPFO. Gosh damn. You want to read their telephone number, 262-673-9745, jpfo.org, Hartford, Wisconsin. Yeah. Give them a call, go on their website, order a whole bunch, give them to your friends. It's a great shirt. One I've started many conversations with over the years, and that's the point. And that's why it's not only factually correct, but it's like strategically and tactically a good thing for people interested in affecting the zeitgeist of society to have. Not that it's a silver bullet or anything, but it's just, and it's also a hell lot of fun. So that's that. More videos to come, and I will talk to you all later.